Ever wonder why your boutique consultancy is not growing as fast as you'd like? In today's video, I'll cover 3 reasons growth tends to stall and how to address it. I'm Tony Gutierrez, a consulting industry veteran with over $1 billion of wins. My mission is to help boutique founders generate predictable premium fee growth. I see 3 patterns in firms that are struggling to grow. First of all, they have poor positioning fundamentals, and I'll cover that in a minute. Secondly, they don't have a consistent sales motion. And thirdly, they normally have misaligned incentives. Let's talk about poor positioning fundamentals. I've talked a lot in my videos about the importance of having a well-defined niche and using an ideal client profile, ICP, as a way to stay focused and narrow on where the opportunity is. And what I found is a lot of firms, especially the smaller boutique firms, struggle with this notion of narrow is better. When you're too broad and you're unfocused and you don't have a clear niche, it has a negative ripple effect. When you don't have a clear niche, it's really hard to define who are your ideal clients. And when you can't define who your ideal clients are, it's almost impossible to define your unique value proposition. And one quick test you should do is ask yourself or your team members to define your unique value proposition in 1 or 2 sentences. And what you'll find is that normally they can't, or it sounds incredibly generic, like we have the best people, or we have a phased approach. And if you have not a well-defined niche, and you don't have a clear ICP, so it's fuzzy, and your value proposition is kind of generic, how are you going to be able to generate thought leadership that's relevant and sticks? It's almost impossible. So the one recommendation I would make is the importance of setting the core fundamentals and having clarity around your niche, your ICP, which leads into clarity on your value proposition, and then also leads you down the path of what type of thought leadership you should be investing in and focusing on. Secondly is most firms have a very inconsistent sales motion. When you think about sales, it's really kind of a 2-part motion. You want to create demand and you want to convert demand. So create demand is basically prospecting. It's a treasure hunt. You're looking for opportunities. Once you find those opportunities, you need to convert them. And I find firms tend to over-index normally on the finding. They spend a lot of time on prospecting. And that prospecting is weak because they haven't set their fundamentals. So the prospecting tends to be very generic. And it's tough to get meetings when you have unfocused prospecting. So I think the first lesson goes back to setting your fundamentals. Your prospecting is a lot stronger. It's a lot more focused. And you have a point of view that is going to be relevant and is going to resonate with your targets. I find that firms tend to rush the convert process. The convert process is interesting because this is where you're qualifying an early opportunity and you're trying to create something that may or may not be a project. And this qualification process is critically important to make sure you understand the opportunity, make sure your client is understanding the opportunity properly, and make sure there's a benefit and that the client is looking at the right problem and thinking about the problem the right way. So challenging the client a little bit is also useful. So I find that a lot of firms don't do this very effectively. They just kind of run with whatever the client says. And sometimes that results in subpar proposals. And it also results in opportunities that aren't really substantiated by payback. So I think a little pushback is useful in this type of a situation. The lesson I've learned is slow down. Remember, no pain, no gain, no project. The third item I wanted to talk about today is having incentives that are well aligned. I find a lot of firms don't do a very good job of incentives, and those tend to fall into either some sort of commission structure or some sort of bonus structure. Either can work, although there's some good research that tends to show that commissions tend to work better in a more transactional environment. Every firm needs to evaluate what they're trying to achieve, where they are in their maturity stage, and just have a well-defined mechanism for rewarding people. Because I find there's a lot of firms hoping that their team will just do the right thing. The firm should do the right thing by installing an incentive system that does the right thing. So I do think that that's an area that if you're a founder, you should really dig into. Is your incentive system reinforcing the behaviors and the actions that you want? So those are the three topics that I see as potentially strong drivers for growth. Making sure you have good positioning fundamentals, making sure you have a consistent sales motion, and then lastly, ensuring that your sales incentives are aligned with your objectives. Go to the resource vault of my website. I have lots of guides and tools and checklists that you can use. The link is in the description. They're all free and you can download them. Thanks for listening. Remember, the edge belongs to those who take it. I'm Tony Gutierrez, and this is the Consulting Edge. See you next time.